Hi, friends. My name is Pat, and you're listening to the I Used to Think podcast, a podcast about the stories of people who are brave enough to change their mind. In today's conversation, we speak with Chris. When Chris was 19 years old, he started his own business. By the time he was 21, he already had 2 failed businesses under his belt. Chris was motivated and very ambitious, but looking back, he realized that he lacked the experience and community he needed to get the businesses off the ground. At the time, he thought that hard work was all it took, but he would come to learn that it took a lot more than that. At this time, he also met his now wife, Jen. Jen was getting her degree to be a pharmacist, and he was really inspired by the way that she was passionate about what she did and the way that she had a goal and strove to achieve it. Chris decided to drop out of school and just go straight into work. He worked various jobs, learning skills along the way, moving up the ranks in different companies, and even learning to face and accept criticism. But throughout this whole journey, Chris realized that he was truly an entrepreneur at heart. Today, Chris runs his own IT business, and he is also involved in Aftergate Studios, which is a studio that creates digital games and board games. Chris tells us what he thinks is truly required for success, and it's a lot more than just simple, straightforward hard work. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Chris. Let's get into the episode. I'm here with Chris and his colorful leafy fall background. Chris, how are you doing?
Pretty good. It's a Saturday morning. Can't complain. But how are you doing, Pat?
Good. I'm really thankful that our mutual friend Keith brought us together. I actually just interviewed Keith for an episode. He mentioned you multiple times in our conversation. And finally, at the end of it, he said, I think I should just put you and Chris in touch. I think that would be the best way to go. And so I'm
Right.
thankful for that. And we got to call and kind of meet each other briefly. And I think you have a great topic in mind for this conversation. So I'll start with the icebreaker just so that listeners can get to know you a little better. You mentioned how friends and family are a big part of your life. So
Mhm.
today's icebreaker is, who is somebody that was a very close friend for you before you were 10 years old? So when you were younger, and what is a fun memory you have with that person?
It's a bit hard for me to answer because a lot of my friends back then I'm no longer really in touch with.
Okay,
um,
sure.
um, a good friend of mine would be someone named John.
Okay.
He's actually someone I met in high school. So my upbringing is a little bit interesting. I went to private school. I started with public school, then went to private school, then went back to public school.
Okay.
So I had a shift of friends. There was no MySpace or anything back then when I was younger. So it's kind of hard for me to keep in touch with people, right? Smartphones didn't exist back then. So once I moved to different schools, I kind of lost touch with a lot of those close friends of mine. But the thing I remember the most in terms of close friends was John. I met him in high school, freshman year. This is when I
Okay.
went back to public school. And yeah, we got along really well. We had a very similar, we're both Vietnamese. We kind of helped to
Okay.
have very similar upbringings. We just hit it off and we still keep in touch to this day.
Okay.
Question about what was the second part of your question?
What is a fun memory you have with John, or what are some things you guys just did together?
Okay. So my biggest memory of John, and this is why we're such good friends. He actually knew about my whole situation, and he's the one that introduced me to my wife. He knew that like I was in a down point of my life.
Gotcha.
He wanted to help. He wanted to introduce someone to kind of keep me motivated. And I met Jen, and yeah, and then it all just happened. But yeah, John was a close friend. I told him everything, so he knew about my whole entire life,
Wow.
and he did whatever he could to help.
Did John make it clear to you that he was out on a mission to find a wife for you?
No, he was out to just make sure I have someone. Whatever happens, happen, and then it ended up being my wife.
Okay.
So it just happened by chance.
That sounds like a good friend.
He's a great friend. He's an amazing person.
Awesome. Okay. Without further ado, let's get into the I used to think part of this. Chris, what is your I used to think statement?
So I used to think hard work was all I needed to be successful. And I thought that was very true as an entrepreneur for myself. I started my first endeavor when I was 19,
Okay.
and it failed miserably. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to do it, and I was working really hard for it, and it failed. And I did it again when I was 21, and it failed again. Failed twice. From there, I felt like I put in so much hard work into, I just didn't work out. And there, I was like, okay, I need to take a break from all this and just take it one step at a time. And that's when John introduced me to Chen
Okay.
because he knew, yeah, you failed twice and never I lost not just my own money, other folks' money too. It was like the worst feeling ever when you fail. And at the time I was so young and naive, it was kind of hard for me to try to think of the pauses from that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I knew I wanted to do something. I just wanted to start my own thing. But you know, the mistake that I had, I felt now, and I'm looking back into it, is I don't have any much working experience.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I wanted to do was computer related because I was always really good with computers at a very young age. But after failing twice, I realized, hey, I should probably just try to live my life in a way. So when I was 23, I met a girl named Jen. She would be kind of like the person who would try to make me a better version of myself. My upbringing was a little bit different. I went to college, but I hated college, so I dropped and started my own endeavor instead,
Okay.
hoping I could kind of just make a job of myself. And again, I did that twice in a period of about 3 years. And then I met Jen. And at the time, I wasn't working. I had no career path, none of that. And she was a student at UCLA, going for her PharmD at USC. And I was like, man, this girl is very highly motivated. I need to keep up with her. So I went to, I need to get a full-time job. So I
Okay.
worked, I got fired, and I was like, what can I do that I'm really good at without a college degree? Because I didn't want to go back to college. I hated college a lot. And I
Right.
knew I was really good with computers. So I got my first job as tech support, a typical tech support in a big call center
Okay.
for a pretty big computer brand, EVGA. And I was just doing tech support for them. And kind of just build my career and then slowly just move up the ranks throughout the years and left that company, got a help desk admin job shortly after at the age of 20, at the age of 24, 25. So I was just there for a year. I was still with Jen during the time. And during that time, during this whole thing, at the same time, I was also doing something with Keith. We were working on music together, which I perfect our, I guess, perfect our craft as a
Right.
musician. I was more of the techie side. He was more of the creative side. He did the music theory. I did the production, the synthesis, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that at the same time doing this. I was like, you know what? I'm kind of keeping myself busy, trying to build my career. At the same time, I had an outlet of stress with music
Right.
and then with Jen as well. During that whole time, I realized like when I was working, I realized how important it was as an entrepreneur to have connections, to have the
Mm-hmm.
network, to have the experience. I was really focused on my career. I knew eventually in the future that I would get back to being an entrepreneur. I just knew that then it was the right time because I was learning so much.
To rewind
Um,
a little bit, what was that first business? It's
yeah,
not painful to talk about.
I'll talk more about it. So we had a great domain name that I purchased for very cheap. I was getting a lot of traffic to it. I'm going to keep it private, that portion private for a bit. But it was supposed to be a cool social media network for car enthusiasts.
Okay.
The problem though is I wasn't really into cars. I just had a domain that had a really cool name that fit in that field.
Okay. Got it.
So I couldn't connect with the people. And I knew I was just creating the website, I was creating like the app, doing all that fun stuff. And then I was like, you know what? I didn't really resonate with the crowd. So that's part of why it didn't work out because I couldn't relate. And the second idea was kind of like a Dropbox version, but built exclusively through Facebook. And again, that fell miserably because it was more technical than I was capable of. And it's because of that lack of experience.
Okay.
I couldn't get people to use it. It was buggy. It was a lot more involved because, creating a Dropbox alternative is a lot of work.
Right.
More so than I would expect. And that's again due to the lack of experience, the lack of knowing the folks who could help me develop certain things, the lack of connection at work. But yeah, those are the two failed. Yeah.
As a fellow entrepreneur, I can already see the entrepreneur side of you because you immediately went to this is why it failed,
Yeah,
which is great. I mean, that's what we need. We need problem solving. So
right,
I'm
right.
curious what went well about those two projects.
I got the right group of people. I wasn't able to lead them.
Mm,
Now that I think about it, I'm very fortunate to have those group of people. And
mm.
because it was my idea, I guess I was kind of assumed to be the leader.
Okay.
And I was too young and naive. I was so dumb. I made some really dumb choices. I didn't know how to bring a team. So when I was down,
Mm.
the whole team was down, and I didn't realize that. You know,
Okay.
now that I think back about it, it's really important to be able to kind of have a feel of the crowd.
Right.
I didn't have any of that. I was only 19, right? And then again at 21, I was like, it's a very young age to try to learn all that,
Yeah.
especially with minimal, if any, working experience. So, but
And
in
it,
terms of the good, okay, go ahead, Pat.
oh, go ahead and finish.
But in terms of the good, yeah, it was team. I thought the idea
Okay.
was pretty decent, but I realized just the idea alone isn't gonna. You're gonna be spending so many hours on this. It's gonna be an idea that you can resonate with,
Mm.
right? And I didn't for both of those. It wasn't like something I just thought it was a cool idea, but I didn't really resonate. I didn't realize it was gonna. I should have done something that I felt like I was very comfortable doing it for years to come at 60
Right.
hours a week, if not more. So yeah, there's some of the things I noticed in terms of the failure, but in a brighter note, there were some great things that happened too. It was mostly the people that I was involved with.
Okay. That makes sense. It wasn't a topic that was personal to you.
Correct. Yeah, it was not. That's why I felt like after failing those two endeavors, me focusing on my career because I was doing IT. I was doing something I was actually really good at,
Right.
and I actually enjoyed doing. I spent so many hours as a young kid. I fixed people's computers. I built my first computer when I was 12. I was
Wow.
like yeah, I was really into tech. I built my first website. It was such a cheesy early 2000 website at eight for eight during my eighth grade class. So
Okay.
I created a website with a guest book, all these things. We were interacting with it. My classmates were talking, they were talking crap and starting rumors, but it was fun. It was pretty cool. That's when I realized, wow, the internet is so powerful. Anyone can access this from anywhere.
Hmm.
But yeah, I created my first website when I was 13 and kind of just ingest as much as I could in terms of
Right.
tech at a very young age. I realized how much I should have just focused on that. When I was building up my career, I was doing that, but for companies, I was getting paid for it. And it was like the best feeling ever. I was like, wow, I'm kind of growing. I'm stepping up towards the corporate ladder.
Hmm.
So my career path is very interesting, and it kind of played a big part of who I am now, along with my relationship and with music as well. When I got my first job, it's a typical first job for most folks. It's not going to be like a career type of job. It was more like a stepping stone, right? Or a
Okay.
ladder. I did that for a year and I left. I was like, this is pretty crappy. I can't imagine just being on the phones all day trying to fix people's problems with computers. It was kind of boring, but I did struggle. It was my first real full-time job
Right.
and I struggled a lot. And I remember my boss he had a one-on-one with me. He said, Chris, you're struggling. Your numbers are all down. You have to
Mm.
step it up. Otherwise, like, you won't be part of the team anymore. And this was like a
Wow.
month in.
That's tough to
It
hear.
it was, and I never got that feedback before. I never got someone told me you weren't doing a great job. Because when I was doing my two endeavors, I was the leader. People would expect me, to kind of step up, and they saw me
Right.
work really hard, right? And I was working really hard. My boss, that's why he was talking to me because he knew I was working really hard. I just wasn't working smart in a way or thinking about it. And he's like, yeah, you got to find a way to bring up your numbers. You're on the phone
Mm.
for too long. You're not able to spot the fixes really quickly. So a month later, I actually thought about it. I was like, okay, I need to think about and reassess how I'm helping these folks because I'm on the phone way too long.
Mm.
And a month later, I was the number one person.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. And I was like, that really resonated. In fact, that my boss was amazing. It
Mm.
was just my teammates, my peers. I wasn't a big fan of. That's why I left after a year. But I stepped it up at year two, and I was the best performer to the point where my boss wanted me to work overtime because he's like, Chris, you gotta step in. I was like, I can't because I was at the time I was dating Jen. I was seeing her on the weekends. I
You
didn't
want
want
to
to
get
work weekends.
home?
Yeah, and I had to drive too because I was living in Orange County, and Jen was a student at UCLA, so I would have
Okay.
to drive to LA. My work was in OC, so
Right.
I want to see her. She was my girlfriend at the time. But yeah, I did step it up. But I was there with EVGA for a year before I moved to my next company at Licks
Okay.
Innovation. And
Your
Licks
story,
Innovation, oh,
I just wanted
oh,
to mention a story that my friend actually told me that reminds me of what you just shared so much.
all right,
She had the dream of becoming an author. So in her
right,
own way was very entrepreneurial. And she was young. I think she was in her early 20s. So she
yeah,
had this dream of becoming an author. She had this idea for a book series. She
right,
would literally go to school, I guess school book signings right? Meet your local author, all that kind of a thing. She knew the school principals. Basically, her name is out there, but it
Mhm.
wasn't sustainable. And so a year or two later, she found herself working at UPS.
Right.
Just financially, it
Right.
at that time in her life, she was in her early 20s, it just wouldn't work. And she talks about how all these principals and heads of schools and school board members would come to UPS to get things notarized, and they'd see her there.
Right.
And they'd say, like, how did you end up at UPS? And it would be such an embarrassing experience for her. And
Right.
so that your story reminded me of that, of just getting humbled, I guess, if you could say. Like that
Mhm.
is very difficult.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, going for someone who was starting an idea with someone who had it's so much like potential and so much vision
Mm.
to help desk in a call center was a bit of an adjustment. But I knew based on my experience, I had nothing on paper really, right? I went
Mm.
to like tell people I failed two startups at the age of 19, 21. It doesn't look so great on resume. But I knew I had to start from the bottom. And the
Mm.
reason why I did that was because my girlfriend, as you're
Okay.
aware, when you have a girlfriend or any relationship, it's not cheap. You know, you have to pay for things, you have to have nice dinners, you want to be able to show them gratitude. And the best ways
Mm.
at certain times, besides saying it, is to
Right.
treat them out, right? And that requires, at least having some sort of disposable funds.
Mm.
So I was working just to get those disposable funds to make her happy. But little did I know by doing that, I'm actually building up my own career as well. So to go on after that job, after a year, I was about 24. I had a year of work experience. I was so happy. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to take on my next role. And I
Yeah.
worked at a company called Links Innovation. It's a company in Irvine. They're really small. It's kind of like a mom and pop shop manufacturing that does retail displays. Pretty cool stuff. But I got my first, I guess, real corporate-ish type of job and have about 300 employees.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, 300 employees. And I was a help desk admin. This is when I really got a boss that I really admire, a manager that I really admire. He knew about my credentials. He was really stressing me to try to go back to school if I could.
Okay.
I tried going back to school during that time as well, but career path was growing faster than my education path. And I had to make a tough choice of doing
Right.
one or the other. But for that company, I worked there for 3 years. And that's when I actually got traveling experience. I traveled a lot to China. I was there about 25 to 30 times traveling to China. I went from help desk to IT admin to IT manager in a period of 3 years. Every
And
year I got
this point,
promoted.
you're 24.
I was 24, and then at the end of that path, I was 26.
Okay.
Yeah, or 26, 27, around there.
Okay.
But for 3 years, I went all the way up to IT manager to the point where I was managing two folks. And it was kind of weird because I was only 20, 26, but I was managing folks older than me. So,
Right.
yeah. But my boss, I resonated with the owner at the time. He felt like school wasn't for him. He started his own business and he's at where he's at, owning, I want to say multi-million, but they were generating about 10 million to 20 million, maybe 25 million a year, which is pretty decent
Okay.
for a company. They were doing retail space. They had a few really big clients. I can't say because of our NDA, but they had some really great big clients. And you recognize these clients, they're really big companies.
Okay.
So I was there and I got real working experience in terms of kind of corporate feel. And at the same time, I decided I needed to move on from that. I was living, so during that time, in terms of my personal life, I was living in OC, but I decided to move in with Jen because she was doing residency, or she was not residency, she was doing her PharmD at
Okay.
USC.
Okay.
So she needed roommates. And I was like, you know what? Think it's time for us to take the next step for me for living with you. So I decided to move into LA. We were living at Monterey Park at the time. And it was great because I could be able to take care of her because she
Right.
was focused in her PharmD and she was stressed out like no other. And I'd be able to cook her food, buy food, make sure she's taken care of, do all these things that I wanted to do.
How long were you dating at this time?
We were dating for about 4 years. And then, after 4 years, we felt like we always wanted to move in together. We just didn't find the right opportunity.
Mm.
On her sophomore year, she decided to move out from her group of girls. She wanted to just be home alone, not deal with any drama after school. So we decided to move in together. It was just us two. And I was driving from Monterey Park to Irvine for that last year of that inspiration. And it
Okay.
was a bit much. I'm not gonna lie. I applaud people who commute over 2 hours a day. I just couldn't do it. It was taking a toll.
It was 2 hours.
It was at least 2 hours
Oh my
combined.
God. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. So I would wake up at 6 just to get to work at 8.
Oh my goodness.
And in some cases, if there's an accident, it would take me 2 hours to get home. So in some cases, up to 4 hour commute combined a day. It was like a part-time job, just driving.
To our non-California listeners, I mean, what is that? 30 miles, 40 miles?
It's 45 miles.
Okay. So that's just California traffic for you.
Yeah, that's 45 miles one way, just so people know. 80 something, 88, 87 miles total commute in a single day.
Okay.
So yeah, after that, I told my boss I just can't commute. My girlfriend means more to me than my job. So I was like, I have to leave. So I gave my 2 weeks, and I wanted a month off to look for a job, maybe 2 months off to look for a job and kind of just decompress, because I was there for 3 years. You know, I moved up the ranks pretty quickly. I was well invested in the company at the time, and there were some processes that I knew I shouldn't take with me, and some processes that I kind of just wanted to again, not take with me from a new job. So I'm like, I need to find a job in LA. I need to find a job in LA. It would be a lot easier. So during this time, this is when Keith and we got more serious with music. So just so you're aware, I know I didn't mention music a lot, but music was part of me since I started working with Keith at the age of 21, I believe, or 22. So I'm going to go back a little bit, talk about the music and how it relates to where we are now in terms of my career. Keith approached me when I was 22, and we were never really close friends at the time. We knew each other. Like we hung out in the same circle. So I would see Keith and he would see me. I knew he was a pianist. He knew I DJ'd and I did music. I wasn't classically trained, but Keith knew that we would complement his classically trained elements. So he reached out to me at the age of 22. He's like, hey, Chris, you want to make music together? We were young, so we were out drinking or something. We were just having a good time with our friends. And he approached me and said, hey, Chris, you want to make music? And I'm like, yeah. He said, we want to make house music. Yeah. And we were both kind of buzzing. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Did you think he was serious?
I knew he was serious.
Okay.
And I love music, right? So I hope he was serious. And the next day we met up. He went to my parents' house and we jammed for the first time.
Nice.
And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. But during that time, our music was so bad. It was very 8-bit-ish. I didn't really know how to work with, a pianist, but we loved it. It wasn't about. I mean, obviously it's about making great music, but it was more just the fact that we're crafting music that made us both so excited. So we would meet at least once or twice, if not 3 times a week. Keith would come by right after Monterey, like he would drive all the way to Monterey Park, like where I was at, because I moved, right? So he would drive to Monterey Park once or twice a week. We were doing remixes. We were trying to figure out what we were good at, and we realized we were really good with vocals. Okay. So we were doing a lot of remixes. We were trying to do remix contests and all these things where we get like vocals to work with.
Okay. What was Jen's opinion of your early music?
She supported it. There was some period of time where she told me I should try to not spend so much time with it, but she knew it was like a passion of ours.
Right.
So she supported me.
Is she the kind of person that's brutally honest with your early work?
She is. She is. She said that she'll tell me it's not good. I would know. I think I have the DJ ears because I knew what sounded good and what didn't. And I would tell Keith, he'll come with the chord progressions. So we kind of developed a certain workflow with our music.
Okay.
We would start with just the piano, as basic as possible. I will come up with a basic beat.
Right.
And then I'll just loop it with vocals. And then I'm like, hey, Keith, go ahead and jam. So he'll just jam, he'll just play. I'll be doing my thing and then when I notice something really good, I'm like, Keith, wait, play that again. It will just play on the piano. So that's freestyling. We'll record it. Yeah, we'll record it, and then we'll just slowly add variation of that chord progression.
Okay.
And then see how it fits. And then I go from there. I was slowly becoming a better producer. I started making friends in the production community, like people remotely. We're just talking. Okay. They'll help me with synthesis and things like that.
Yeah.
And Keith, he was always good with piano. I just told him, just keep up at it. Just keep creating amazing chords because that's what you're best at. And then we'll make it work. But going to that, so to jumping forward to where I was in terms of my career, Keith would just swing by. I remember during those 2 months, Keith would swing by a little bit more often because I wasn't working. And he would just, would just hang and make some cool music. So during this time, we were starting to build our own library of sound fonts, our own library of chords, our own MIDIs. We were starting to develop our own library of music. We didn't have a name for ourselves. We were still using our old alias at the time called the Shy Guys. It's kind of funny because it's kind of relatable because Keith and I were both shy. It is, right? But we didn't want to get sued by Nintendo because Nintendo is very notorious about using any of their patents, and we were, obviously using theirs with the whole mask and everything. We didn't want to be famous. We were doing music as a passion. We didn't want the fame,
Mm.
so we really want to protect our identity in an event that, for some miracle, our music takes off.
Mm.
So we decided to come up with a new alias, and as you're aware, it's my first name and Keith's last name, and
Got
we
it.
were just gonna have it with a guy with a white mask.
Uh,
That's it.
I'll just
Uh,
mention. So,
yeah,
can I say the name of the?
please.
So your artist name is Chris Jordan,
Yes.
and to this day, even though I've met both of you separately, I want to call both of you Chris Jordan
Yeah.
because on my Spotify, that's what comes up as the artist. I'm like, no, his name is Keith. I'm like, no, your
Yes.
last name's not Jordan.
Yes.
So it just confuses me. But
Yeah,
anyways,
it is. It's a combination of both of us, really. We wanted something timeless. We were thinking when I came up with that name idea, it was with kind of like Calvin Harris. Calvin Harris is not his name's not Calvin Harris.
okay,
It's Adam
that makes
something.
sense.
It's a stage
Okay.
name. So we want to come up with a stage name similar to
I'm
that.
assuming his name is not Marshmallow either.
No, no, definitely. Well, it might be. No, I'm kidding. It's not. It's not. Definitely not. But yeah, we wanted the privacy. So we were looking at artists that we admire, like Daft Punk, because no
Mhm.
one knows who really Daft Punk is. I mean, you'd be able to figure out if you dive deep enough.
That's a good point.
Like Dead Mouse, when you think of Dead Mouse, you don't think of the artist. You think of the mask, right? The Dead Mouse
Mhm.
mask. We wanted something similar, so we created that Chris Jordan. We just did music because it was a great outlook for us, a great way for us not to think about work, not
Right.
think about relationship, not think about anything really. We're just in the zone. And there were times when Keith and I were in the zone. Yeah, we created there were days where we were not feeling it, and there were days where we were feeling it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of amazing. Now that I think about it, I feel like I enjoy music so much because it makes you feel, it alters your way of feeling, your mood without any external actors or substance.
Mm.
You listen to a sad track and feel sad. You listen to an upbeat track and feel motivated and pumped. It was
Mm.
kind of an amazing feeling. And we were just doing it. We just enjoyed it and we just kept at it. But going on to kind of like the story of my career path a little bit. So yeah, just think about us still working on music. And Keith, when you see someone that long and that many times throughout your life, you
Mm.
can't help but just develop a personal relationship with that person, right? So Keith and I, we slowly became best friends,
Mm.
and best of buds. We just see each other. It's gone to important, even though I don't see Keith as often or frequent as nothing has happened.
Mm.
But going back to my career, I started working at my first startup. It was a pretty cool environment. I never thought I
Okay.
was going to work at a startup.
Okay.
I worked at a company called Farfetch. They're now bought out. The CEO currently, if you do some research, if anyone knows what Farfetch is kind of in the fashion tech industry.
Got it.
When I first joined, they were looking for a system administrator. And I wanted to, at the time, I was like, I want to do more techie stuff than more management. Even though I was an IT manager, I just want to go back to more focusing on building and developing my craft developing my skill as a tech individual
Mhm.
versus management. I felt like management
Right.
always kind of came naturally for me. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so I'm like, there's no point in me doing that. I feel like I could manage a team if I needed to. I just want to perfect my skill set.
In
So
a
I got
way,
a
yeah.
job. I got the job after a 2 month interview. I do want to say, so during this whole 2 months when I wasn't working, I was applying like no other, almost 100 applications. And I felt like I was trying to be different because like my credentials wasn't amazing. I only have two places, maybe even one really. I got one at a call center and then one where I built up my ranks for 3 years.
Mhm.
But I was competing with people with degrees. I was competing with people with masters. So I felt like I had to apply as many places as I can and do really well in interviews. And I felt like the best way to do that is to do the actual interviews and to get familiar with doing the interviews. So I did so many interviews. I did like 20 different interviews. I applied at almost
Oh
100
wow.
different
In 2
places
months?
in 2 months.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, but I'm like, I just got to keep applying. I felt like I need the advantage. I need to be well spoken and be able to do really well during these interviews to the point where I got 3 job offers. It was pretty amazing. All at the same time, it was kind of crazy how it
Wow.
happened. And I selected Farfetch. The reason why I selected Farfetch is they had offices all over the world. Like they were a
Okay.
global company. They were based in London, but I'll be working in the LA office
Hmm.
as the only IT guy for now. I joined, I was employee number 80, and I was there for 3 years. So it was a lot of learning experience because I never worked at Star. I never noticed how fast they moved. By the time I left, they had about 5,000, a little bit over 5,000 employees globally. And that job was pretty cool
Hmm.
because I traveled everywhere. I went to Portugal, I went to London, I went to Brazil to help build out their office space. And that's when I got a lot of experience building out new office spaces. So yeah, that was a pretty cool working experience where I was building out physical infrastructure for Farfetch, like globally. I went to New York quite a bit as well. It was pretty cool experience. So I went to China right for the job before. And now I'm traveling to
Right.
other parts of the country.
At a relatively young age too.
Yeah, yeah. I was still like only 27, 28 at the time. So I got a pretty decent resume at the time. At that point, I've been working professionally for about 7 years. This is when she was going to do residency. So it's like 3 years later, like for almost 4 years later, she was doing residency.
Hmm.
And then she had to move. She was doing residency in NorCal. And I think in Sunnyvale, I forgot which city exactly, but it's in NorCal. So she decided to move back home. So she's originally from NorCal. She's from San Jose. So I'm gonna move back home for a year. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna live by myself. It's just rent's too expensive to live by myself at the time. This makes sense. I'm not gonna pay for a 3 bedroom place by myself. So I decided to move back with my parents. So I'm gonna take a year apart.
Okay.
And I'm gonna
Decision because she wanted time with her family. Was it something between you guys that you agreed on, or
yeah. So it was something that we agreed on mutually, and I
okay?
promised her that I would see her at least once a year. The reason why she did it is it was the only place where she was accepted for residency, and she had to do
Oh,
residency to get her
got it.
PharmD.
Got
Yeah,
it.
and the only place that accepted her was in NorCal. And so COVID's coming up. It's funny that for us. So we're a year before you when this happened.
Okay.
Before that happened for you. So I was seeing her throughout 2019. So
Okay.
2019 was a year when we decided to not live together. So after living with someone for 3 years, well, close to 4 years, and then not to live with that person,
Hmm.
it was a big adjustment. I remember I was still at Farfetch at the time. I remember coming into work so sad because I didn't see her. I
Yeah.
woke up and she
Yeah.
wasn't there, and I went home. She wasn't there, so I was by myself. I was pretty depressed. I'm not gonna lie. She was my girlfriend.
I could see that.
And
Yeah.
it made me realize. So during that year we were apart, it made me realize how much I loved her. So
Hmm.
it was actually really beneficial. And I was like, you know what? I think she's the one. So during that year while we were off, I felt like I was ready to marry her.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, I'm gonna ask her when she moves back, or at the end of her residency, because I didn't want to ask her during residency because she's so stressed out. Yeah, she's working like 50 to 60 hours a week,
Oh
something
my.
like that, right?
And you guys had
And
talked about it? I talked about getting married before.
we mentioned it. The way Vietnamese people get married, I had to ask for her parents' approval.
Okay.
I had to ask her, and obviously her parents, especially her mom, she likes to talk to her daughter. So Jen knew. It wasn't a surprise. So Jen
Okay.
knew I was gonna ask her. She just didn't know when. So at the end of that year, so winter of that year, 2019, I got my new job. I was now working at my second startup called The Real Real. They do luxury consignment.
Okay.
So I got that job, and I was like, you know what? I'm ready to buy the ring and ask Jen to marry me at
Nice.
the end of the year. So I asked her. Of course, she said yes. I asked her when we are up in San Jose, and we celebrated. We had this nice dinner, and I was there with her that weekend. Everyone was very happy. Her parents were very happy. And then COVID happened. We were planning the wedding, and then 2022 or 2020, COVID happened and kind of messed up everything in terms of our planning. We had to push
Mm.
back everything because we were planning pretty quickly. We got like the restaurant down, or like the venue down. We got like
Oh
down
my gosh,
payments
that's
all
so
put down,
frustrating.
and we had to kind of cancel that and use this down deposit. Yeah, to use the security deposit because of the whole COVID. No one knew how long it was gonna last, so we decided to just do a backyard wedding instead. 2 years
Okay.
later, but going
22.
2022, that's when we got
Okay.
married. No, 20. No, I'm sorry, 2021 is when we got married. So what year later? Yeah,
Okay.
but it was almost 2 years because it was 2019 when I asked her. Then we got married at the end of 2021. Like the original plan was to have a 1 year engagement. But yeah, at the time I was working for my second startup at The Real Real. I learned a lot. I was a system engineer. I helped build out more office space. So for this job, I wasn't building out office spaces. I was building out retail stores. And then COVID happened, so I worked at home, which is pretty amazing. I never realized how cool working remote is. So I was like, then COVID happened, and I was like, no one knew what was going to happen. But when COVID happened, I had a lot of people from my previous connections, my previous working experience asking me, texting me, hey, how do we transition like our systems so they could be accessed at home? A lot of questions. And I was like, huh, there's actually a big need for smaller businesses who don't have a full-time IT team that
Mm.
needs IT help.
Okay.
That's when I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this as a side hustle. My entrepreneur kind of coming back at me.
Right.
And I was
After
like,
what, like 10 years
yeah,
or?
almost 10 years. Yeah, almost 10 years. Yeah, almost 10 years. I was like, I'm going to do this while working full time because I need the money. I'm not going to borrow money like I did.
Hmm.
I want to do this myself, you know, and I have a career and, and I felt like this is a great time for me to do this now.
Mm.
I saved up enough. So I was like, I'm going to try starting my own side gig. So I started Wink Services. Just so you are aware, Wink, the name Wink is actually a play on my name.
Okay.
It's C. So Chris Win. So Wink. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Wink Services. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to do Wink Services. And then I started getting some clients. I was getting, I got one, I got two, I got three, and I built it all the way up to 4 or 5 as well. I'm actually building clients by working full time.
Mm.
And then I still enjoyed the consistent money because with the clients, some of them were paying me monthly, but the others were just paying me on demand, like for break fixes and
Hmm.
other things. It wasn't enough for me to quit my job. And it wasn't enough in terms of time commitment where I need to quit my job.
Okay.
So I was juggle both.
Right.
And then after the real, I was like, you know what? I need a higher paid job. So I worked at my third startup. This time it's not in fashion tech, it is actually an animation studio, which is very, very cool. It was very bleeding edge. I was dealing with a lot of cloud infrastructure and I learned a lot in terms of cloud management.
Okay.
I did that for a year before Wink got too big to a point where I can't do two at the same time without sacrificing my personal life. And so after a year of working at Spire Animation Studio, I asked my wife if it's okay for me to quit. And she said, yeah. She said, yeah, I'll support you like how you supported me back when she was doing her PharmD.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. This is my only chance to do this before I have kids because I have to play safe when I have kids. So I've decided to quit my job and focus on this full time as of a year ago. So my company is barely a year old. It's about 11 months old now.
Okay.
And during that time, Keith asked me, hey, do you want to get involved with Aftergate Studios? And I was like, I do love playing games. And I know for a fact, because I learned through my years of experience, I should be doing something I enjoy, something I'm proud of, right?
Right.
Especially if I was going to be a leader, I have to show that I have a drive for it and I'm actually invested in the idea and what we're doing. So I was like, yeah, let me meet the team and see where it goes from there.
And just to
And
define Aftergate, you mentioned it
yeah,
was virtual. How did you describe it? Virtual
it's
and
it's a tabletop gaming company.
okay.
Yeah, we create like board games, card games, but we also create digital games.
Oh, digital. That's what it was.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, digital. Yeah, right. So when I started Wing Services, Keith also started this idea with a group of friends called Aftergate. They had no name at the time. They were just calling it Aftergate. It was for the game that they were going to create called
Okay.
Aftergate, the card game. They had no branding. It was kind of like all over the place. I felt like they were lacking leadership in terms of where they were going. But I knew Keith was working on that like a few years back. And he didn't really have much to show for it. So they were meeting up for a year and a half with very little to show for it. And Keith would also ask me for ideas and for assistance and my advice and guidance. And I think he knew I had the experience and I have an idea of what to do.
Hmm.
And he knew I was doing my own business too. So he was trying to get some, I guess, advice on what to do with Aftergate because he wanted to do something with it.
Mhm.
It was kind of like outside of our music passion, Keith also has another passion of making games. It's just him, Keith just makes great games.
He
I
has
remember,
his own entrepreneurial spirit in a way.
yeah, in terms of being more of a creative.
Yes,
I feel like.
exactly.
More so than the business aspect. He's always, I felt like I told him, hey, you always kind of focus more so on the creative than the business side. And
Mhm.
it's great that he does because that's where he's great at.
Mhm.
But I think he was lacking the business side and he kind of asked me to kind of help in. So I joined them and I joined a meeting with them and they all kind of felt like, Chris, you're the right guy for this. You should help lead us. I helped Aftergate at the same time. I quit my full-time job doing services. So I don't know if it's by design. I don't know if someone's watching us and kind of tell me, hey, Chris, you should do this. But I decided, yeah, I'm going to take charge and help you guys out. And I kind of gave them a roadmap to follow. This is what we're doing. this is what we should be doing. This is why we
Okay.
should release it. We should focus on the graphics, all these things. And I think we have a clearer vision. So we developed a company. It's called Aftergate Studios. We actually have products named. We actually have graphics done. And we're actually selling our first card game soon. It's in
Okay.
production right now.
Okay.
It's Keith's game that he developed when he was in high school called Gladiators. And I was a big instrumental force in getting that done because I told him, hey, we need something. We can't just talk about this idea and not expect anything to happen.
Right.
We have to showcase what the meeting to the world. We have to. And the game is actually really fun. I actually enjoy playing it. There's a lot of skill involved. It's not just chance. I keep losing the key just to show you that there's actually skill involved. But at the same time, we're actually making our second game too. So we're going to have a Kickstarter. It's a proper board game. Yeah.
I told Keith that I would put in the description all the websites and all the links, including this episode too. My hope is through these episodes, you guys can get some support. Maybe you'll get some big funder or something.
Right, exactly. And I appreciate that, Pat. Anything helps. We're at the small, but we're still we just got started. So any press is amazing. And thank you, Pat. I'm sure people who are listening would be interested too, assuming that they're invested in this whole story. But yeah, I do want to go back and just wrap up where I'm at now and my way of thinking and kind of just give you a better context of how I thought back when I was younger as an entrepreneur and how I thought now. I'm definitely more humble. I've definitely learned what it's like to become a better leader. I still have a lot to learn. I know that. But I think one of the things that makes a leader great is knowing his own limitation and being able to to admit that. And I felt throughout the whole career, my career path, and where I'm at now, I feel like I could develop that and be able to okay, now this time I'm starting something I actually enjoy. I have a team of me that sees that passion, that are motivated by that passion, both with Aftergate and with Wink Services. Wink Services is my primary. We're growing at a really nice rate. But even with Aftergate, when I meet with them from time to time, but yeah, we've grown. I've started with 6 all the way to almost 20 clients. And we're still growing. It's crazy because the past week, we got 3 new clients. Okay. And this week, I'm meeting with other people to become for them to be our future clients or prospects. So it's been a blessing. I was like, wow, it's actually working out. I think one of the things I've noticed is when I meet with these other business owners, they see the passion and they get sucked in by my passion because I love IT. I love supporting them. I love being able to help them scale their business because obviously I'm not going to help them scale to the public company. And they see that and they know, hey, this guy understands to be scrappy, and he can help us, scale when we need to. So it's been a great experience. And at the same time, having Jen helping me, believing in me, supporting me, my friends and family too, they all know it's been a blessing. Having that support as well. Because when I started when I was 19, I didn't have that. Right. I was just a naive kid, just having vision. I'm like, I don't need your support. I could do this if I work hard enough. But now I realize how important it is to have a good foundation of family and friends supporting your entrepreneur spirit or your entrepreneur drive and starting something. I'm still very far. I feel it's still a grind. But at the rate I'm going in a few years, I feel like something great will happen. Maintain, be humble, be very appreciative, and again, still work hard, but also work smart. Right. I have to think very analytically, which I've been doing throughout my career. Right. I wouldn't be able to have a career progression like I did if I just worked hard alone. I had to think, and I had a lot of talks with my boss, both good and bad. And it made me think, outside of just working hard on something, I have to work really smart. Because if you work smart, it can 10 times or even multiple times fold the hard work. So
I wanted to bring that up because you talked about the support group. I mean, obviously Jen is the biggest support, but thinking back to your 20-year-old self, what's the difference between your community support group now and what you have today? Or I should say then and what you have today.
Yeah. So back then it was just a group of friends. I didn't have any working experience. So I didn't have any external contacts outside of that. Which I'm not saying that they're not great. They're great. But now I actually have professional contacts where I have other business owners that I can call. And that helps quite a bit. So yeah, just that alone is a big advantage outside of just my close friends. And obviously when you develop your life as you get older and you expand upon that personal group as well, and you realize, hey, I should align myself with people who are who's also motivated as myself. Because when you're 19, you're just starting your professional career, your adult life. A lot of those people with you don't have that same working experience. They don't have much life experience. They haven't got scolded by a terrible boss. Maybe they have, maybe they don't, but they haven't gone through that. A lot of those, those life experiences, both
Right.
personally and professionally. So the peers then were very inexperienced like myself. But now I actually have peers and a support group, both professionally and personally, that I
Mm.
can rely on. Keith then didn't have much working experience. Now he has over 7 years of working experience. So he knows, he's a lot wiser than he was. He's a lot wiser now than he was back then. And that applies to my whole personal circle.
Have you ever
And
had to drop a relationship because it wasn't
yeah,
right? And how did you do it?
yeah, I didn't do it gracefully. I'm gonna admit, I just stopped talking to them.
Okay. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ghosting before ghosting became a thing, correct? I don't advise with that. It's
Mm,
never fun doing it up front, but I think it's the best way sometimes. However, there were more recent groups where I felt like, hey, I just can't. I'm too busy working.
mhm.
I have something, and they understand that. The more it's understanding group of friends or group of folks. But others, yeah, if they don't, then maybe we shouldn't be. Maybe we should just keep it as it is now and just not develop it further.
Right.
But yeah, it's just kind of hard for me to say, but you do have to really pick and choose your personal circle.
Mm,
You are, especially if you spend a lot of time with them, you want to make sure you're aligning yourself with folks who have the same vision as yourself.
mm,
It helps. You want people with the same career path. You want people who have the same vision, the same mindset. Otherwise, like you're inherit those other traits. So it's important that you do align yourself with those. But word of advice for those who are listening: try to do it either upfront or more gracefully. Just don't ghost. It's a terrible idea. I know because I did it. But I'm actually reaching out to some of them because I see them advancing their career. I just miss them. It doesn't harm to have lunch with them, just see what they're doing. And networking is really important. But yeah, just don't ghost. Don't do that. Just tell them, hey, I'm busy. And if you do that much time, they'll understand, hey, you're busy. Or leave it
yeah.
alone.
I just wanted to ask a few more as we wrap up here. I was curious about well, first, thank you for being open, I feel like, about school not being your thing. I know for me, especially being in Asian communities, there is a stigma.
Yeah,
It is tough
it
to
is.
tell someone I didn't even finish my
Yeah,
associates or I didn't finish community college.
yeah.
And yeah, I think some people really carry that. And so I guess my question for you would be, how did you find the courage to make that decision? And then what would you say to
Yeah.
somebody who realizes, I'm really getting to know myself and school is just not for me. What should they do?
Right, right. For someone who's done that, my career path and my upbringing is very unique.
Hmm.
I don't advise doing what I'm doing unless you know what you're doing. For me, I was very fortunate to be very good at computers at a young age,
Hmm.
and at the time I didn't know I was gonna make a career out of it. I just knew I was good at it. It just came naturally for me, just like how people who are musically gifted just came naturally for them. When I made that decision, it was a pretty tough decision. My parents were really mad. They
Hmm.
were upset. But for me, it was just I wasn't learning what I was wanting to learn. I just felt like it was flawed, and maybe it's the school that I went to too. But I didn't really enjoy the school that I went to.
Hmm.
There was no school pride. I tried doing fraternities. It wasn't for me. I just hated it. I was like, you could just go to drink. It's kind of boring. I don't want to meet new friends. I have enough friends. Blah blah. I was kind of homebodied,
Okay.
and I wasn't really into that whole environment. But at the same time, what really drove me away was I wasn't learning what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about computers. And I felt
Hmm.
like my best way to do that was for me to start working as soon as possible in computers.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And I learned the hard way in terms of like work ethics, like having consistent schedule. As a college student, you don't really learn. There's a lot of intangible things that you learn, like good work ethics, you know, being able to deliver projects. Those are
Hmm.
things that you learn a lot, like during school. But I learned that on the job, right? And in a career path that I knew I was going to take. My advice to those who's thinking about dropping school, unless you know exactly what you're doing, and it's pretty safe bet, right? I wouldn't recommend anyone dropping out of school just to focus on music, for example. That's a really high risk. You have to assess. For me, I had some risk, but it wasn't as high of a risk. I wasn't in the creative space where I was quitting. I was doing it to focus on my career as IT, which is a safer bet. my mom and dad, they were actually very understanding because they knew I was really good at IT.
Okay.
They were upset at first, but they knew I was really good at it. They knew I had a natural gift. So they were okay with it eventually. And so, yeah, it's a combination of things. If you know what you're doing and you're 100% sure school is not right for you, then yeah, you should consider it. Talk to your parents, talk to your family, make sure it's the right choice. And if you want to start working or start doing what you're doing, then, it's a lot of work. I feel like I'm at a disadvantage every time I was applying for
Right.
because I was competing against people who had better resumes than I did or better credentials at the time. A little bit of luck and a little bit of like hard work and working smart, you might be able to succeed without school. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you have no idea, stick with school. You're going to learn a lot of intangible skills that you'll be able to apply in your professional life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think having that plan B is important. It's not just like you went out and bought a surfboard and that was
exactly.
That was your thing. It makes sense.
I remember reading an interview with like LeBron James. I'm a big fan of basketball. I'm a sports fanatic. But James says, you shouldn't inspire to be a basketball player. There's a chance of you being a pro NBA player like he is. It's very unlikely. Very, very unlikely, right? Even if you have the body, you just have to have the talent as well.
Right.
So, something to consider, depending on the field that you're trying to do. Worst case scenario, let's say you do it and you failed and you don't know what to do with your career. You can start working like I did or go back to school, right? And then maybe develop yourself further. But yeah, school, in my case, was overrated. I'm not going to say that's true for everyone.
Okay.
If you want to be a doctor, it depends on your field.
You should probably go to
doctor,
school, yeah.
You should probably go to school. The chance of you being a doctor without a degree is very unlikely, if not impossible. Right? If you want to go to law, yeah, you should probably go to school, at least learn the basics. And you have to pass bar exams and stuff. It really depends on your field as well. If you're in tech, very similar to me, and that's what you want, and you're really good at it and you have a passion drive for it, then you might be able to succeed. Everything in LLC, I just make sure you do your own research, be smart about it. You're betting on the early lives of your career if you want to do this. So it's a big risk. So yeah, make sure to consider that for those who are listening.
Throughout this interview, I'm hearing that relationships are really key, right? Hard work is important. And you also mentioned working smart, but relationships are really where it's at. And that's something that can't be developed without time. So honing in on your most important relationship, what was it about Jen? I mean, you kind of hinted at it, like her motivating you to get off the couch, for lack of a better way to say it.
Right.
What else about that relationship helped you?
Yeah. So when I met Jen, she was very education driven. She knew, like, she was one of those very book smart individual, right? She was very, very screwed. Like she's very focused on her education. And when I saw that, it made me want to keep up with her, like I mentioned earlier. So I was like, I need to keep up with her, otherwise I would lose her. And I really like this girl, so I'm gonna focus on myself so I could keep up with this girl. So I start developing my career, and she says that, and she's very happy and proud. That kind of relationship, when we drive each other, is the best type of relationship, and that's something you want. Not just with your friends, but also with your significant other. Right. You want them to be able to drive you like you drive them. And I knew if I didn't focus on myself in my career, that I was going to lose her. Like she would just drop me. Like she doesn't want a deadbeat, for example. And she knew I was focused on myself. She knew I was really good at computers. She knew I made the right choice. She supported me, and it helped me support her as well. And it worked out. But yeah, it helped a lot, not just from a career standpoint, but also from a mental standpoint, an emotional standpoint. Because stress is hard. Like I know I have an outlook of music when it came to stress, but it helped a lot when I had an outlook of stress with Jen. She's my best friend. Outside of Keith, she was the person I was seeing, the person I saw pretty much every day. I saw Keith maybe a couple of times a week, but she was the person I saw the most in my life during that time, and still now. And it's really important to have her as my best friend, because I'll be able to tell her stuff. I'll be de-stressed, talk to her about things. Right. I'll talk to her about day to day. We're so comfortable with each other, but at the same time, we're constantly motivating each other. She supports me with what I'm doing, just like how I support her when she was doing her PharmD. It's really important to have that type of relationship, at least in my case, because she's supporting me just like I support her a few years back. And it's helped too from an emotional level. You could get this from others. For me, I was very fortunate to get from Jen, but you get this from your family. It's really important because you need a way to connect to someone on an emotional level as well to help you drive.
Right.
It's not just professional level and everything, but it's also that aspect. I hope that answered your question, Pat.
Yeah,
Like I kind
that
of going all over
was
the place.
amazing. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I think one of my favorite parts of the week for me, because I work
Right.
from home, one of my favorite parts is when sometimes she'll be sitting on the couch. I'll just be like 10 feet away on a Zoom call. And so she'll hear me being frustrated on a call with a client or something like that.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite moments is just after the Zoom call, just sort of sitting there. Maybe I feel dejected. Maybe I feel
Right.
frustrated or confused. And I just turn to her and she's like, that sounded like a hard call, or what are you thinking right now? Just a very simple question.
Right.
And maybe the answer for everyone is just to go out and get married. No, no, I'm kidding. Everyone has their different life
Yeah,
path.
yeah.
I get what you're saying to a certain extent. It's very encouraging.
It helps more so than you think.
Hmm.
It kind of resets your mind and you're back at it, right? Versus having to deal with it by yourself. Because I
Hmm.
dealt with it by myself when I felt, and I was all time low. So it helps to have that person because you're gonna get those tough situations in life, and having that person there just to help you through it. Your significant other, your best friend, heck, even a dog. It could, it depends. It could be anything. It helps having that outlook.
Right.
Um, for me, I had two, and I was very fortunate to have two, and that's music with Keith,
Hmm.
and that's my best friend and my wife, Jen. So it helps. It's just like you said, it's just small things that kind of just helps you and makes you a better person, makes you think about the bad and more about the good. So
Right.
go ahead, Pat. I was gonna say something, but I kind of lost my train of thought.
No worries. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Chris, is there anything about entrepreneurship, working hard, being successful that we missed?
Yes. Success means a lot. It's a different meaning for a lot of folks.
Hmm.
So think about your definition of success. My definition of success is just being able to do it and make it sustainable and growing it. Remember to take it one step at a time and
Hmm.
always be humble. It's a better story overall. It's just better for your soul. And make sure to connect as much as you can. Networking is very important, especially when you're trying to be an entrepreneur. And because of that, it makes you a better person. You don't want to be that person that someone thinks ill of. You want to be humble. You want to be appreciative. You want to be able to show that you have a passion in what you're doing. But
Hmm.
yeah, just make sure to focus on yourself during this whole process. Right? Health is really important. Don't forget that. Try to put in 15 minutes of exercise when you can. I'm the driving force of my own success,
Hmm.
and I need to be as healthy as possible. And I have to make some life changes. One of the things I did is I no longer drink liquor. I only drink
Hmm.
beer. I gotta keep my mind sharp at all times, and liquor
Yeah, for
just
some
helps.
people, that's a really hard change.
It is, yeah. I might eventually give up alcohol altogether, but a lot of my clients still have to drink beer from time to time, so I only drink a beer or two with them sometimes. But yeah, I'm not. I have to make some really life changes. So
Right.
just a word of advice, be prepared to make a lot of changes and sacrifices, but make sure you don't lose sight of who you are and what you're trying to do with whatever you're doing as an entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah. So
Thank you so much. This is really cool
yeah,
for me because we've had various topics on the podcast. Entrepreneurship and career really resonates with me. I think also just because of where I am in life.
yeah.
I'm
Congrats, Pat.
running two businesses.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is, I know for me, a very encouraging conversation. So, yeah, I just really appreciate your vulnerability. And
Yeah.
we covered a lot. So, this was amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you for having me, Pat. It's been a blast telling my story. Yeah, being able to connect with you guys on a lot of levels as well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning about Chris's business and the services that he provides, I have his LinkedIn link in the description to this podcast. I've also included the Instagram page for Aftergate Studios if you're interested in some of the games that Keith and Chris are putting together. To hop on the very popular podcast trend that has been happening for the past few years, I have video versions of these interviews on YouTube. All you do is look up I Used to Think podcast on YouTube, and it should show up, unless, of course, there's another podcast by the exact same name, but last I checked, there isn't. So you should be able to see at least the last couple interviews in video format. It's something you can just enjoy at home or at work, and I hope to continue releasing those in the future. Thanks again, and until next time, peace.